You may be seated, and DeAnna's going to come and share with us tonight, and aren't we grateful again? Aren't we grateful? Thank you. Thank you.
I almost don't want to exit that time of worship and music. But one of my favorite verses, and I think I say this about a lot of them, is His grace is sufficient for us, and His strength is made perfect in weakness. It's one I'm standing on lately. I love that verse so very much. One quick announcement. Sunday, we were supposed to have Chris Harrison here, but he's not going to be able to be here due to illness. But we are going to have Jeff and Wendy Garrett here with us as a missionary to Tanzania. But now he is with Priority One, and they build Bible colleges in Tanzania and other countries. But they're a lovely couple, lovely family, personal friends, and look forward to hearing from them. So tonight is a very simple message. It's just a reminder to all of us, and it's a reminder for me too. And I'm a little self-conscious about it because I feel like ever since 3 weeks ago, the events of those times, I feel like everything I say, I feel like everybody's just kind of like thinking I've had this ecstatic experience and that everything I say comes from that. But I think this is a reminder for all of us for any point in our lives in our Christian walk, because the enemy is out to kill and destroy and to distract us. One of the scariest verses in the Bible to me says, "Depart from me, you wicked sinner. I never knew you." And so tonight the message is simple. The message is return to your first love. And I want to look at the book of Hosea, then I want to turn to Revelation and look at that. But I look around, and I know most of you, and I know most of us have been married for some length of time in our life. And you think about the beginning of a relationship. You think how it starts. I have a son that's dating, and I've watched him over this past year, how they're so in love, and now they're still so in love, and they spend every moment together possibly that they can. You just can't separate them. They've got to be together, and that's how we start out. And I don't know your salvation experience, but I remember mine, and I've heard other people tell their stories, and how when they came to know the Lord, they were so on fire for the Lord. And some people talk about they felt different. I've seen some people that have had a glow about them. And I've had some people who just went and they made sure they got their Bible. They wanted to be in Bible studies. They wanted to be in discipleship groups, depending on their age, of course. But there was that passion there. And just like with a lot of relationships, as we are in a relationship with someone, we kind of take that person for granted. We spend time together, we may not, that passion may die a little bit. That flame may go out a little bit. And if we're honest, I think we could say the same for our relationship with the Lord. And so I want to look in a little bit at the book of Hosea and his situation and his circumstances and how that came about. The name Hosea in and of itself translates to salvation. And I think of Hosea in the story, it is a story of redemption. And so it is a type, it is a sort of a shadow of the salvation that Jesus provides and how the Father redeems us. It's a story of Hosea. He was a prophet, but he had a wife that was unfaithful to him. And if we look at chapter 1, verses 2, we'll read a little bit of that. It says, when the Lord first spoke by Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, "Go, take for yourself a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry, departing from the Lord." I think this goes against so much of the teaching in the Bible to do this, to marry, and it goes against what we would do. Why would we want to pursue someone who has been unfaithful if they have that history? And so many things we teach this day and age. We say, a leopard doesn't change its spots. A snake doesn't change its stripes. If someone's unfaithful to you, they're going to continue to be unfaithful to you. But here we have the Lord commanding Hosea, Go and take for your wife a wife of harlotry. And then we see that they have 3 children. And it says, so he went and took Gomer as a wife. She conceived and bore him a son. And the Lord said to him, call his name Jezreel. For in a little while I will punish the house of Jehu for the blood of Jezreel, and will bring to an end the kingdom of the house of Israel. And on that day I will break the bow of Israel in the valley. Then Gomer conceived again and bore a daughter. And the Lord said to Hosea, call her name Lo-hu-rumah, for I will no longer have mercy upon the house of Israel, but will utterly sweep them away. But I will have mercy upon the house of Judah, and will save them by the Lord their God, and will not save them by the bow, or by the sword, or by the battle, or by horses, or by horsemen. When Gomer had weaned Lo-hu-rumah, she conceived and bore a son. Then the Lord said, call his name Lo-ammi, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. The names of these children were symbolic messages, not names that we would give our children, because some of these symbolic messages are not good. The name Lo-ammi literally means not loved. And it meant that God's patience was coming to an end. Do you remember being a child? Can you remember when your mom might give you a look? She might tell you she's going to do something. She might tell you one more time and you're going to get the spoon or the shoe or the hairbrush, whatever was in season at that time, whatever was close by. But you know when she gave you that look, or you knew when she got up or when she moved, you knew that patience was gone. But because of this separation from evil, because he can no longer tolerate the people's continued wickedness and rebellious, the time for God's judgment was coming, and that's what this name was saying. When the 3rd child's name is not thought to be Hosea's son, and the child's name symbolized how Israel had broken his covenant relationship with God with their ongoing rebellion against them and their constant worship of false gods. But we know God. God from the beginning is who he is all the way through the history, who he is today. And we know God never changes. And the characteristics of God is that he's good, he's merciful, but he's still just. But when we read on in this story, if we look on just the next verse at chapter 10, we see that God has a plan to restore them. In verse 10 says, the number of the children of Israel will be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there it will be said to them, you are the children of the living God. Then they will be gathered together and appoint themselves one head, and they will come up out of the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. It says, plead with your mother, plead, for she is not my wife, and I'm not her husband, that she put away her harlotry from her face. Sin is never supposed to remain. God made a covenant with the people. He said, if you will be my people, I will be your God. But there's conditions. I don't know if condition is the right word, but there were expectations between that relationship. And one of that expectation is the expectation of holiness. And that God is our creator and us is the created. That we would play by the rules that he set forth for us. And he set forth laws. He gave the people the 10 Commandments. He gave them his expectations of them. And one of the things was, thou shalt not commit adultery. And in this book of Hosea, we have the image of Hosea's wife, Gomer, literally committing adultery. But what we have is the parallel and the symbolism of Israel, God's chosen people, committing adultery against God, stepping out on the covenant that he made with them. But the Lord agreed. He said he would restore them. If we look at chapter 2, at verse 3, and he says that he would leave her as in the day that she was born, and turn her into a wilderness, and turn her into a dry land, and kill her with thirst. And then God promised judgment on them. He told them that what was going to happen, that the sin would continue, and if it continued, what his response would be. He said, I will take back my grain in its time. I'll take my wine in its season, my wool and my flax. Then he's going to expose her in her shame, and no one will deliver her. This judgment cannot be escaped. This judgment that God's going to pour out on the people. And I think in this day and time, we don't always recognize who God really is. And I think we think that the powers that be, that our money, that our job, that our family members, that they can rescue us. And I hate to rail on politicians, and I won't go deep into that. But you see how a lot of them manipulate and play games, and how they get each other on their sides, and money can buy their positions on things. That's not going to do us any good when we stand before the Lord. Our relationship with the Lord has to be pure and unadulterated. If we look at verse 14, it's talking about God's mercy on Israel. And he says, I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. From there I will give her vineyards to her, and the valley of Achor as a door of hope. Years ago, I had to write a paper on the book of Hosea. And that wilderness thing really, that puzzled, why is God going to take them out in the wilderness? But I thought about that on a couple of different levels. I mean, think about how you respond. What happens when we have a crisis in our life? We are asking for prayers from everybody, and we're running to God. But when things are going good, we might be less prone. I'm sure there's some of us that are faithful in the good times and the bad. But if we're completely honest, sometimes we might start coasting and forget that we have need of a God. But then I think about this in context of a relationship. And we're talking about relationship, and I'm thinking about when you're dating. When you went in for that first kiss, when you went in to try to sweet talk that significant other, did you do it at the mall in front of everybody? We good? No. What do we need to do? Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay, I hear it now. Usually, from my experience and what I see other people in dating, they're trying to get off alone. They're trying to talk one-on-one and by themselves together. But it's when we're alone in those dark places in our life, God gets our full attention. God gets us away from the noise and the distractions of everything else, that he can draw us to himself. And sometimes I believe that's why some of the reasons we go through the wilderness is because then God can have our full attention, and he can speak to us, and that we can hear him. We don't have the distractions and everything preventing us from hearing him. But God says, he's talking about, in verse 16, he talks about calling him his husband and not calling him an idol. And he's talking about taking the names of the idols from their mouth. Because one of the sins that the Israelites had is that they pursued other idols. And I know we think we don't have idol worship in this day and time. We may not have Baal. We may not have an Ashereth pole in our home. But we still have idols in our lives. Some of us, it may be another relationship. For some of us, it may be a home. Keeping our home up to date, keeping our home decorated, maybe even keeping